You know, it makes me very sad to say that we refinanced out of a subject to loan. But when you have a ton of equity, my mentor, he told me this. He said, Hans, you have all the options in the world when you have equity in the property. The more equity you have in a house, the more options you have in terms of your exit strategy. All right, welcome back to the Sub 2 Investor Show. Hans here, and in this episode, I'm talking about what to do with subject to deals that have a lot of equity. This is a bit of an anomaly in the subject to realm because most subject to deals are on the low equity side of things. What do you do when you get one that has lots of equity? This is episode 2 of Deal 2 in my Real Sub 2 Deal Breakdown series. In this series, I'm going through real life subject to deals that I've closed from beginning to end so that you can walk with me and see what goes into doing real subject to deals. Now, I might not be a guru, but I've established over 30 cash flowing properties, mostly using creative finance within 2 years. And so there might be something for you to learn here, especially if you are a newer investor and just looking to get your feet wet with creative finance. So if you recall, in my last video, I talked about 3 reasons why I hate doing pre-foreclosure deals, but there was one huge reason why they can be amazing. Namely, you can get lots of equity in these deals. So this presents a dilemma for the sub 2 investor who's used to buying lower equity deals, and that is, well, what do you do to get that equity out of the property? And this can apply to several scenarios, whether you have to do a large rehab on the property and dump lots of cash into a deal, or if you have to catch up a seller's mortgage payment, and that might be in the tens of thousands of dollars range, and it's more than you're going to be able to recoup when you place a tenant buyer in the property and collect a down payment. Now, this is really only a problem if you abide by similar criteria to what I have when analyzing subject to deals. I have 3 criteria that must be met in order for me to do a subject to deal. Number 1, it has to be a low rehab or no rehab deal. I've done flips and I just don't want to be a rehabber. I'd rather gain velocity and do lots of deals and build a portfolio quickly rather than essentially have another career in construction. That's not why I got into real estate. And especially if the deal is on the lower equity side of things, I just can't afford to be putting lots of money into a rehab. So number 1, little rehab. Number 2, it has to cash flow at least $300 if I'm going to close on a deal and put my time and energy into it. That's kind of subjective to myself, but that's the number we arrived at. Number 3, I must get back all or at least almost all of the cash that I put into the deal up front. Now that can come from usually a option fee or a down payment from a buyer. That must pay back all the money that I put into the deal up front, or at least most of the money that I put in. Preferably, I'm net positive and can actually make something up front on the deal. So let's get into the numbers on this one. So we got the purchase price was $111,000, which was comprised of a $75,000 mortgage that we took subject to and $30 in arrears. The seller happened to have a large arrear. And then we brought the seller about $6,000 of cash at closing because of all the equity he had. So we were all in for $111,000 right there, and the property was probably worth, well, it appraised for $200,000, but on the market, more realistically, we probably would have only gotten $185,000, maybe $190,000. We had some equity. So to be all in zero on this one, since we had to bring $30,000 to reinstate the loan and then pay the seller $6,000 plus some holding costs and closing costs, we're probably, $37,000 cash out of pocket. Now that was money we borrowed from a private lender. But then what did the rehab look like? What did we end up putting into this property? This was early on in my creative finance career, if you will. So I probably spent too much on my rehab than I would nowadays, but let's take a look at the budget and you can see what we spent on the rehab of this property. All right, and just for fun, here's a photo of the day that we closed on the refinance. It was a cold February day, and I posted on Instagram, "Bird, a sub-2 deal for the first time on a very cold day." Fun times. All right, so I'll scroll to the bottom and just cut to the chase. We spent approximately $12,000 on our rehab. Now, if you take a look, the main costs were really the $3,200 we spent on painting and the foundation repair that we did, $3,100 for crack repair. All the other items are relatively low cost because we used a handyman that had a good hourly rate and was reliable. And then you can see where we paid $0 in labor here. We actually did some of the rehab ourselves just to keep costs down. And this is something we did early in our investing career, honestly, just to get more deals under our belt and to get familiar with the rehab process. All right, and just out of curiosity, some of the other items, we replaced the bathroom vanity. It's something we often do. We put vinyl tile in the bathroom as well, just to freshen it up, make it look a little bit nicer since it was just a one bathroom house. There was some plumbing repairs that we had to do. And then we installed a new backsplash, but we bought one that was like a stick-on from Amazon and only cost $100, and I put it on myself. Actually, let me show you a quick little Instagram video I took of that. So it wasn't a huge rehab at all. We had to clean it out. We installed the backsplash, did some cosmetic updates in here. Man, this place was dirty. There was a fascia board that was rotten, and the occupancy inspector knocked us on it, and so we ended up replacing it ourselves. It was pretty much the worst thing in the universe to have to do on a cold February day, so we took a little video of it too when we finally dislodged it and got it down. That was our enemy this morning. You could see that the kitchen wasn't super updated. There's white appliances in there. I would totally leave those still. The backsplash, yeah, it was a good call. I probably could have had a contractor do it, $200 or $300 for the labor. That floor in there was nothing special. It was sheet vinyl, which is a very cheap flooring option, but we just spruced it up, and the paint definitely made it look nice. Some of the other rehab costs, which are very typical, are the clean outs and the landscaping, brush haul out, stuff like that. And you could see some other odds and ends in here that we ended up paying for, namely some electrical things. So approximately $12,000 in addition to the $37,000 which we were out of pocket to just close the deal. So that is approximately $50,000, we'll just call it, that we were cash in this deal. This house, again, it's after repair value. Let's just call it 200, maybe closer to 190. But at 200, a 20% down payment would only be $40,000, which would be possible to attain. It might take a while because this house wasn't super updated. Somebody might want to get a discount on the down payment, just compensating for some of the updating that they might want to do. So we might be waiting a while before we saw that 40 grand down payment. And to be honest, at this stage in our career with creative finance, it was hard to believe that somebody would be willing to bring a $40,000 down payment on a property. Now I kind of know better and wish that we at least would have tried. But back then, when we were first starting, it didn't seem really plausible to us that somebody would bring that much. And so we wanted to recoup the $50,000 because, well, we owed a private money partner. We needed to get the $37,000 back. And then I think we put the other 12 for the rehab, maybe on zero interest credit cards, which if you can get approved for them, it's a great strategy if you have good credit to use for your rehab. And so we wanted to pay down that credit card debt, which we used for the rehab. So we needed a way to get $50,000 back out of this property. Now, we only owed on it Well, gosh, his mortgage balance was $75,000. So, right, we only owed $75,000 on the mortgage, and we had a house after we did the rehab that was worth $190,000. So there was a ton of equity, over $100,000 of equity in this subject to deal, and we just couldn't let it sit there. So we decided that we would need to refinance. You know, it makes me very sad to say that we refinanced out of a subject to loan. But when you have a ton of equity, my mentor, he told me this. He said, Hans, you have all the options in the world when you have equity in the property. The more equity you have in a house, the more options you have in terms of your exit strategy. Going back, I think that the interest rate on this loan was actually, it was in the 4% range, and we ended up refinancing into a loan that was also in the 4% range. Now, the amortization went from a 30-year schedule to a 25-year schedule, which meant that our monthly payment bumped up just a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. This was a commercial loan, so that means we are going to have to renew it and the rate can adjust. Let me show you the closing statement on our refinance loan. All right, so you can see here's another Alta statement, and we closed on this property back in November. And here you can see the settlement statement is February 1st. So it took us a few months to refinance. So if you take a look at the bottom of this statement, you can see that we paid off the sub 2 loan, pay off a first mortgage loan to US Bank, and I said 75. Well, the payoff ended up being closer to $78,000. And then we have all of the closing fees here. But then check this out. We got a new loan. We essentially burred out of this subject to deal and got a loan for $130,000. So that means we walked away with a pretty fat check, the difference between $130,000 and $77,000. So that would be $53,000. That was enough to pay the $37,000 that we owed our private money partner, and then pay off our $12,000 credit card debt, which we used to pay for the rehab, and then pocket a little bit of change. The nice thing, though, is that we were able to then sell the property on seller financing and collect a $14,000 down payment from our buyer, which meant that we were able to pocket even more money from this deal and have a lot of equity on the back end while still cash flowing every month. I'll go over the numbers in detail in the next video, but we turned a sub 2 deal with a ton of equity into a BRRRR, essentially. We bought it with subject to, we rehabbed it minimally, just enough to place a buyer. We actually refinanced it first because our lender allowed us to do that. We rented it out, well, actually sold it on seller financing, and then we got enough cash that we were able to repeat. So we BRRRR'd out of a subject to deal, which was pretty cool, I must say. If we wanted to go pull on that equity and do like a home equity line of credit or maybe a second on that equity, then we could go do that. Like my mentor said, Hans, when you have equity, you have options. So let me know if you've ever BRRR'd out or refinanced out of a subject to deal. Did it break your heart to do so as much as it broke mine? What could I have done better? Would you have approached this deal differently and not have refinanced it like we did? Tell me what I did wrong. Let me know in the comments below. On the next episode, I'm going to break down the numbers, exactly what we sold it for, how much we cash flow, the interest rate that we charged, the down payment that we got, and just why this is such an amazing deal for us that's going to continue to reap dividends throughout the ages. Until then, stay creative. Peace out.